there, welcome to another insightful episode of African Monitor. This is where I bring you up to date on the latest happenings, the common, uncommon, weird, tragic and downright bizarre happenings on the continent. My name is Chioma Innocent and I will be your host taking you around the African continent in about half an hour. Welcome to African Monitor. Today, we begin in Nigeria, where at least 24 security operatives have died in total after a helicopter conveying dead and wounded soldiers from an evacuation mission in Niger State, 249 kilometers north of Abuja, the capital city, crashed on Monday. The evacuation mission had been to retrieve soldiers wounded or killed in an ambush by armed bandits in Chukuba village in the Shiroro local government area of Niger State. The figures were given by a spokesperson for the Nigerian military, Major General Edward Buba, during a press briefing in Abuja. He said there were 14 soldiers and 7 wounded ones aboard the aircraft when it crashed, alongside 2 pilots and 2 crew members. He also said an investigation is currently underway to determine the cause of the crash. Authorities have yet to disclose the details of the evacuation mission or any more information around the crash, including whether there were any survivors at all. Reacting to the tragedy, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said in a statement that the fallen soldiers would forever be remembered, not just as servicemen, but as national heroes who gave their all for the peace and security of the country. The ill-fated helicopter had taken off from the Kaduna airfield to Minna, but lost contact with the control towers from both Kaduna and Minna, the Niger State capital. As the tragedy unfolded, Dogo Gide, the notorious leader of a group of bandits that has been a source of terror across parts of northwestern Nigeria, bordering the countries of Niger and Chad, has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the army is yet to respond to these claims. Now, in a tragic development on the Horn of Africa, at least 26 people have been killed in an explosion in the town of Finote Salam in northwestern Ethiopia, amid heavy fighting between government forces and a local militia group. A further 50 people were injured in Sunday's blast, according to Manaye Tenau, CEO of the Finote Salam General Hospital. These victims are only those treated at the hospital that we know of, and the total number of casualties remains unclear. The hospital had already treated more than 160 people in the days leading up to the explosion, as fierce fighting between government forces and a local militia known as Fano erupted across the Amhara region earlier this month. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, EHRC, has expressed grave concern over the heavy fighting between these two groups beginning from August 3, following months of tension and sporadic clashes. The Ethiopian government has declared a 6-month state of emergency in the Amhara region on August 4 after days of clashes. Once allies against the Tigrayan forces in a deadly 2-year conflict that ended last November, the government and the Fano militia have fallen out in recent months after the group resisted a move by the federal government to disband its regional forces. The Amhara nationalists have argued that this will jeopardize regional security. But the EHRC said there was a heavy fighting in and around cities and towns across the Amhara region, which involved the use of heavy artillery, resulting in the deaths and injuries of civilians. The United Nations has called on all sides to respect human rights and take steps to de-escalate the situation, noting that previous states of emergency have been accompanied by violations of human rights. The governments of Australia, Japan, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America have also noted in a joint statement that civilian casualties, urging all parties to protect civilians, respect human rights, and work together to address complex issues in a peaceful manner. In March of this year, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said that the U.S. has formally determined that the armed forces on all sides of the conflict in northern Ethiopia have committed war crimes. Talk about people who are fighting but are both in the wrong. In another tragic occurrence, at least 60 migrants are presumed dead after a boat disaster off Cape Verde, West Africa, according to the International Organization for Migration, IOM. The Cape Verde island chain is found about 350 miles off the extreme western tip of Africa and is on the route to the Spanish Canary Islands, a gateway to Europe. A total of 101 people were on board the boat at the time, the IOM said, with 38 people, including 4 children, rescued. 7 people have been confirmed dead and 56 people missing. Those missing at sea are presumed dead, according to the IOM, making for an estimated death toll of 63 persons. Another organization, the Spanish human rights NGO Caminando Fronteras, which translates to Walking Borders, gave a higher figure, saying it believes 130 people were killed on board. Were on board the boat, 192 people were killed. According to the IOM, the boat departed the coast of Fas Boye in Senegal on July 10, but was rescued on August 15. Recently, there have been a surge and increase in the number of immigrants arriving in Cape Verde, according to the IOM, adding that the nation has recently graduated from a lower to a middle-income country. It is still unclear whether the migrants intended to reach Cape Verde as their final destination, or whether they were heading for the Canary Islands, another archipelago around 1,500 kilometers to the north. The Canary Islands are part of Spain, and in recent years they have become an increasingly popular destination for migrants from West Africa trying to reach Europe. A total of 9,864 migrants have arrived by boat to the Canary Islands this year alone through August 15. This is a 4.7% decline compared with the same period last year, according to a report by Spain's Interior Ministry. Well, it seems to be a reign of tragedy across Africa, as at least 55 people were killed and 146 others injured when clashes broke out between 2 powerful armed factions in the southern Libyan capital of Tripoli. Emergency Services spokesman Malik Masset told local media outlets on Wednesday about this development. Fighting began on Monday this week after the detention of the commander of the 444 Brigade, Mahmoud Hamza, as he attempted to travel through Tripoli's main Mitiga airport. He was apprehended by a rival faction, the Special Deterrence Force, which controls the airport. The reason for his detention and arrest remains unknown. The clashes ceased late on Tuesday following an agreement reached with the UN-recognized Government of National Unity to transfer Hamza to a neutral party. Civilians were among the casualties. The fighting is considered the most severe of this year, with images showing smoke rising above the capital following the overnight battles. The agreement encompasses the cessation of all military operations in Tripoli, the return of military units to their barracks, assessment of damage to public and private property, and for the Government of National Unity to issue compensations. The United Nations Support Mission in Libya stated this week that it is closely monitoring security incidents and developments in Tripoli since yesterday and their impact on the civilian population. The mission reminds all parties involved of their responsibility under international law to protect civilians. Libya has seen little peace since it was split between warring factions in 2014, following the 2011 NATO-backed uprising against former President Muammar Gaddafi. The Special Deterrence Force and the 444 Brigade are considered the strongest military forces in the Libyan capital, according to Reuters. Let's take a short break, and when we return, we take an exit from the drizzle of tragedy as we bring you more information on the happenings in other African countries. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. More than 1 million people have fled Sudan to neighboring countries since April, according to the United Nations, as fighting between two warring factions have plunged the country into a full-blown civil war. The conflict in Sudan has displaced more than 3.4 million people inside the country, according to a report released this week by the International Organization for Migration, IOM. Those who escaped Sudan have arrived in other countries in the region, including Egypt, Libya, Chad, the Central African Republic, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. Heavy fighting broke out between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces (RSF) in mid-April this year, triggering a mass exodus of refugees from the East African country, where allied militias have been accused of killing civilians, ransacking houses, and ethnic cleansing, leading to accusations of crimes against humanity. 4 months into the Sudan war, reported incidents of gender-based violence, including sexual assault, have surged by 50%, piling pressure onto a healthcare system already depleted by insufficient aid, electricity shortages, and hospitals damaged by the fighting, according to the United Nations. The regional director of the UN Population Fund said the spike in gender-based violence amounts to war crimes and crimes against humanity. About 260,000 women are now pregnant, and almost 100,000 of these women are expected to give birth in the next 3 months. But without critical services, including hospitals and safe delivery, the lives and those of their children and the babies that are going to become the future generation are severely at risk. In July this year, the United Nations said that as many as 4.2 million women and girls were now at increased risk of sexual violence due to the fighting in Sudan. While West African military chiefs have said they are prepared to use force to restore democracy in Niger following last month's coup if diplomacy fails. The generals from the ECOWAS group of nations met in Ghana to coordinate a possible military intervention. The ECOWAS Peace and Security Commissioner Abdel Fattah Musa said almost all member states were committed to contributing troops and are ready to intervene in Niger. He added that the coup leaders in Niger still had time to pull back from the brink, but said all options were on the table if they did not restore civilian rule. The threat of intervention has raised fears of a wider conflict, as the military government in Mali and Burkina Faso have said they would side with their counterparts in Niger. ECOWAS officials have also said their resources will be used to support troops, but they will also welcome any help from the outside. Still in West Africa, popular Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, who has been on a hunger strike for 2 weeks in protest against his detention, has been taken into intensive care, according to his allies. Mr. Sonko was the victim of an illness that occurred last night, said Oseni, who is a member of Mr. Sonko's PASTEF party that was forced to close by Senegal's authorities. A medical source at a hospital principal in the capital, Dakar, confirmed that he had been moved into the intensive care unit. PASTEF says the authorities were responsible for Mr. Sonko's condition after the charge and detained him for insurrection and conspiracy against the state, amongst other crimes. There has been no statement from the authorities on Mr. Sonko's condition. He plans to run for president in February next year, but has been engaged in a bitter power struggle with the authorities since the year 2021, when he was placed under investigation in a moral corruption case. In June this year, Mr. Sonko was sentenced in absentia to 2 months in prison, which he said was politically motivated. That triggered angry clashes by supporters that left 24 people dead, according to Amnesty International. He was arrested the next month and earlier this week was charged with fomenting insurrection. Moving forward, South African athlete Oscar Pistorius, who has spent 6 years in prison for the murder of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, has asked the Constitutional Court to declare him eligible for parole. This is coming after his bid for parole was denied in March, when it was revealed that he had not served the minimum required sentence to qualify for early release. Pistorius was found guilty of murder and was given a 13-year jail sentence in 2017 after a long and dramatic trial and several appeals. He shot and killed Steenkamp through the bedroom door of his high-security home on Valentine's Day in 2013, claiming that he had mistaken her for an intruder. He believes he qualifies to be released on parole and that staying longer in prison constitutes an infringement on his fundamental human rights. However, the country's top appeals court explained earlier this year that the six-time Paralympic gold medalist still needs to spend another year and a half in jail before he could be considered for parole. The confusion was brought by the fact that Pistorius' time in prison had been broken up by appeals and by the time he spent under house arrest. The majority of participants of a three-day meeting in the Democratic Republic of Congo's parliament have voted to lift military rule in two eastern provinces deeply affected by long-raging insecurity. The state of siege, where military authority replaced civil rule, was put in place by the central government in May 2021 with the aim of fighting armed groups operating in Ituri and North Kivu provinces. But a recent report to the United Nations Security Council by Secretary General Antonio Guterres last week said the situation has become worse in the two provinces, where about 4 million people have been displaced. UN-backed Radio Okapi quoted MP Fabrice Adenonga as saying that 195 out of 196 participants of the consultative meeting that ended this week voted in favor of lifting the state of siege. It is now up to President Felix Tshisekedi to eventually react on the matter, as government spokesperson Patrick Muyaya told the press conference in the capital, Kinshasa. And that is all we can take on the program this evening. Thank you for joining me. For more exciting programs, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is Voice of the People Television. You can also find us on our social media platforms at VOP TV Live. Till I come your way again next time, my name is Chioma Innocent. Keep watching African Monitor on Voice of the People Television.